few other things popped up here now that I entered in my effective date, and you can see that I'm on the grid side of Spark. So there's basically three sides to Spark: market analysis, grid, and cost data. So I'm on the grid side, and now I'm ready to upload my comparables or add in my subject property information. Now, if you've used similar products to Spark, one of our competitors, this process will be somewhat similar, but there are going to be a few differences, so you want to watch out for a few things. First of all, when you download your file that has your data in it from MLS, you do not just want to open that file, because Spark is a website. We are not a product that's an application that sits on your computer that you install. It's just a website. So if you open up your file that you get from MLS that has your comps in it or your 1004MC properties, then it's just going to open up a spreadsheet. It's not going to open up into Spark because for security reasons, it can't. It just can't open up the website. So you actually have to go to the Spark website rather than automatically doing that. It doesn't really take any extra time other than going to your browser and choosing it from your favorites, but that is something you have to do. So let's just go ahead and start that process. Now, here's my MLS, and I'm going to show you a few different things here. So first of all, what I've done is I've done a search in these geographic boundaries that you can see right there. Now, when you're getting data from Spark that you want to load into your MLS, there's a few different pieces of data you can get. So if you're used to other similar tools, then they're going to allow you to go to your MLS, download the properties you want to use as comps, then you can load those in, and then you can go to your MLS and do a search for your competing properties, download those, load those in, and then send all that information into your report. And with Spark, it's going to be fairly similar to that. We do have a couple extra options if you want to do a few other things in addition to that. And so right now I'm going to show you the use case where you would get all the data you want from your MLS and load that into Spark, not just limited to the competing properties for the MC and the comps for the grid. So let me just go ahead and show you that. So in Spark, you can do the same thing we just talked about, where you get your competing properties and your comps, but you can also get a larger file, which would be the neighborhood file. In Spark, we call it the neighborhood file. And what that would be is, for example, all the single-family homes in your defined neighborhood boundaries. Not the ones that are limited to whatever GLA and age and stories, however you decided it was competing, but all the single-family homes, or all the condos, or all the multifamily properties in the defined neighborhood boundaries. And so that's what you see on the screen here. So I did a search in my defined neighborhood boundaries for all single-family homes, and then I exported that. And that was, you can see it's 1,206 properties. I export it, and that's what appears down here, right here. This is the little file that I downloaded from my MLS. My MLS calls it custom export. Yours might call it something different, and that's okay. And then and by the way, let me just stop there and talk about the different internet browsers. So I use Google Chrome, and Google Chrome is currently the preferred browser for Spark, but you do not have to use it if you don't want to. When you use Google Chrome, though, and you download a file from your MLS, then that file just appears down here in the bottom left. And it makes it real easy to just drag and drop it right onto Spark, and I'll show you that when we get to that point. If you use Firefox, then in Firefox, up at the top right, there's a little download arrow button, and every time you download something from your MLS, it goes into that arrow. So all you do is you click that arrow that's at the top right, a little menu expands out, and it shows you the files you've downloaded, and you can just drag and drop them right onto Spark, just like you can with Chrome. They just come from a different area, top right instead of bottom left. And then last is, if you use Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge, then when you download your file from your MLS, you're probably used to it saying, do you want to open it or save it, or do you want to save as? And with Spark, you want to choose to save it or save as, and you just save that file wherever you want. If you just choose save, most likely Edge or Explorer will just automatically save it right into your downloads folder. You can choose save as, and then you can name it so you can remember what file is what. But that's kind of the way it works. When you download a file from the internet, no matter what browser you use, it does download to your computer, and it most likely is going to download to your downloads folder unless you tell it otherwise. But in Chrome, even though it downloaded into my downloads folder, it also just put it right here to make it so I have easy access to it. And in Firefox, I also have easy access in the top right. They just don't give you that option in Explorer or Edge. So I just want to let you know the difference there. So some of you might not see these files down here. Okay, so I got my neighborhood file, which is all of those properties in the defined neighborhood area. And by the way, let me just explain to you what that file is for, because some of you may not want to use all the single-family homes or SFRs or condos in the area. That file, what Spark does is it uses that neighborhood file that we're talking about to calculate your low, high, and predominant price and age. So however you normally like to calculate that, that's the search you would do right here to get those properties and then download them so that I got a file, and then you can upload that to Spark. Then once you do that, you narrow it down to your whatever you say is a competing property with the subject, and that's what Spark is going to. So that next file we're about to get is what Spark is going to use to calculate your 1004MC, or if you're not using the 1004MC, to calculate all your market analyses that you want it to perform. And the market analysis we'll get into quite a bit later here. So you go ahead and you go ahead and do that search. So I'm going to say, let's limit it by GLA and lot size and stories and year built. And so now I took that 1,206 properties down to 316. And then I just hit export, and then it downloads that file to my computer here. Now, I'm telling you that you hit export, but that's how it works in my MLS. In your MLS, it might be very different. And again, I will show you in a few minutes how you can see the instructions on exactly how to do it in your particular MLS. All right, so now I've got this big search that has all of the properties in the neighborhood. Then I have it narrowed down to just competing properties. That's this one. And then last, I have this file, which is actually just the properties I want to load into my actual sales grid. Those are my potential comps. So I'm going to click list here, take a look at those, and basically I just put a checkbox next to the ones I want. I checked, I think, like 12 here. All right, and I'm good to go. And then I hit export, and then I download those, and those download is this file right here. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. In Spark, the way most appraisers use it is they get 3 files: the big neighborhood file, the file for the competing properties, and then the file that has the properties you want to load into your actual grid. You can also do a separate export for your subject. So if your subject has been listed, then you want to just like go and do a search in your MLS for your subject, export that, and then you can get a 4th download, which is just your subject listing. And I'll show you a couple other ways in a minute how you can load data into Spark, because you do have a few options. You don't have to do it the way I just said. All right, so now let's just say I went to my MLS, I got those files, and now I'm ready to load them into Spark. Now, first of all, on this Spark screen, before we actually load in the data, this is what I was just referring to as far as the instructions particular to your MLS. So some MLS systems require you to perform a special setup that allows Spark to be able to read that data properly and accurately. So in Spark, what I would recommend all of you do is click this yellow button the first time you use it. Even if you're in an MLS that doesn't require setup, then here, let me close that and do that again. Even if you're in an MLS that doesn't require a setup, then at least that instructions page will tell you how to export the data from your MLS, because you may not know, maybe you're new to this. And also, there is a specific type of export you need to get. For example, in CRMLS, which is this Southern California, mostly broader Los Angeles area, in that MLS, you export using the I believe they call it the full export, which gives us all the fields. And so you export using that. But in Denver, Colorado, they use what they call the appraiser export, which gives us all the fields we need. So just make sure you click on this at least the first time and make sure that you're getting data the right way for Spark. And Spark will tell you if you upload it and it's not in the right format. It'll give you a message saying that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this yellow button. It says need help with file setup, click here. And basically, whatever MLS you say that you're in, which is in the top left here, Spark will go to the instructions page for that specific MLS. So now it took me to the AR MLS instructions, and I've got a little video here I can watch, or I can just follow the instructions. And basically, these are the instructions for my MLS. Some MLSs, the instructions are longer, and you can expect if you do have to do a setup in your MLS, it's going to take somewhere between 2 and 10 minutes, depending on your MLS system. And keep in mind This is a one-time setup. So once you do it once, you'll never have to do it again. So you don't have to worry about that. In my MLS, it's actually a pretty quick and easy one. It's